Okay, everyone, welcome to the Asheville City Council meeting. We're all very excited. There's going to be a concert here in just a minute, so we're going to try to beat the concert. If you have a cell phone, please mute it, me included. And if you need a parking voucher, you parked in the Civic Center deck, make sure to get one at the front desk. You should be able to tell the parking attendant you were here for the city council meeting, but just in case, you can get a voucher. And if you want to speak on any item on the agenda, please be sure to sign in at the desk you passed on your way in here. Also, just in case you weren't aware, all of our public hearing items have been continued. Now, that's just the public hearing items. So we still have the consent agenda, we have the city manager's report, and we have the Memorial Stadium discussion. But the public hearing items, which are the zoning matters, have all been requests to continue different issues with those. The applicants have asked to have them continued. So with that, if everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Early April Fools. All right. Okay, under our consent agenda, council, we need to have a brief discussion about item J, but first I need a motion to adopt the consent agenda without item I, which is related to one of the public hearing items that's had to be continued. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda without item I?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Kim was the first motion.
Gwen.
Okay, and the item J, a resolution authorizing the city manager to apply for locally administered project program funds for the French Broad River Metropolitan Planning Organization for the purchase of art buses, the Livingston Street Complete Streets Project, and the Swannanoa River Greenway Project. These are agreements regarding the same. You want to talk about these?
So my question around item J was it addresses the replacement schedule for our transit fleet, but it doesn't say what type of buses. And I know that meeting our carbon reduction goals means looking at hybrid and fully electric vehicles when possible.
Right. So this grant application is actually for funding for 2027 or 2028. So our application for the buses is a little bit vague because it's possible that we could apply for electric buses or purchase electric buses if that money is awarded and there's an electric bus that suits our needs at that time, or we could potentially purchase hybrids or diesels. So we wanted to ask for just a kind of a round number to help us purchase buses, whatever those may be at that time.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, council, any other questions regarding the consent agenda before we vote? Okay. All right, all those in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda without item I, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. All right, moving on to the manager's report. I'm going to turn it over to Deborah Campbell, our city manager.
Thank you.
And then she's going to turn it over, yes.
Yeah, and then I'm going to hand off. Good afternoon, Assistant City Manager Rachel Wood will be giving the presentation, and I think, Rachel, is this your first one for full council?
It is my first one for full council.
Well, go for it.
All right.
We normally
Thank
haze
you.
people
Well,
during this part, but
I'm just hoping I don't go into labor. That's my worst nightmare during this presentation. So apologies in advance if anything happens. But good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm Rachel Wood, Assistant City Manager. This evening, the presentation I'm going to be giving really is a continuation of a lot of the information that the mayor shared at the recent State of Downtown luncheon. And before I forget, I do want to thank there are several city staff in the back who have contributed to this presentation. presentation. More importantly, they've contributed to the development of a meaningful strategy to address cleanliness in downtown. So I don't want to name anyone because I'll forget some names, but I do want to give kudos to the staff because this was a heavy lift over the past month to develop. Okay, so if I can point to the right thing here, we'll just use the arrow. So quick overview of today's presentation. I'm first going to go through our key takeaways. Then I'm going to hit on some cleanliness-related data, current state data that we have currently available in the city. Then we're going to talk about some available communications resources that the city has, talk about some of our current cleanliness programming that the city has, as well as what some of our partners, including governmental agencies, as well as some of our nonprofit agencies have. And from there, we're going to talk about our short-term and long-term cleanliness strategies. So key takeaways. One of the things I heard from all of the people sitting back here is that cleanliness really is a multifaceted issue. There's not just one culprit that's contributing to the cleanliness issue across the community. And in order to solve cleanliness, it's really going to take a community-wide, holistic approach to address. As I mentioned, the city and several partner agencies currently contribute significant resources to addressing cleanliness. And there are some current constraints with our ability to effectively implement those programs that I'll go through in a moment. The city and our partner agencies have worked closely together, particularly over the past several weeks, to develop those short-term strategies. And then there are some longer-term options that are being considered, both as part of the budget process, as well as some longer-term conversations that need to happen with our partners on additional resources that might need to be added to truly address root cause issues associated with cleanliness in the community. So I'm not going to read through everything on this slide, but several of our staff helped contribute to this slide, and the purpose of this really is to note, again, that cleanliness is a multifaceted issue. There are several sources, and there are several causes contributing to those sources of litter and other cleanliness concerns across the community. And being new to Asheville, I just want to, bears are still charming to me, so we need to note that even the bears contribute to our cleanliness concerns in Asheville. So really important to make sure that members of the City Council, as well as members of the community who are listening tonight, are aware of some of our currently available communications resources. And we were intentional in listing the Asheville app first. We do recommend, whenever a cleanliness concern is reported, that people use the Asheville app. And the reason for that is we can get specific geographic data and then immediately submit a work order and have staff respond. Staff is always happy to respond to emails, but sometimes the email gets sent to the wrong person, it gets sent to an elected official, and then we have to figure out who it needs to go to, and that ultimately just delays our ability to respond and sometimes can impact the data that we have available in terms of how we respond to that information. So a couple of other outlets. We've got our customer service phone line, which residents are welcome to call, and we can get work orders routed relatively quickly there. Specifically for litter and other sanitation issues, residents are welcome to call or email our sanitation services division. We also have our neighborhood services division, which is a part of our CAPE department, and residents are welcome to email neighborhood services, particularly if there are questions around scheduling a targeted litter cleanup event in their neighborhood. And then, as I mentioned, we don't want to necessarily discourage people from sending staff or our elected officials emails, but oftentimes we have to send multiple emails back to figure out the location, make sure we have the right information, and then ultimately route the correct department to be able to respond to the concern that needs to be addressed. So just some of the data that we currently have available. This is the past 5 years of work order data that's been entered into our Munis system. This does include calls, this includes staff entered data, as well as data from our Asheville app. And what I'll note here is just the darker the blue, the more work orders that have been submitted in that geographic area. Every 3 years, the City of Asheville participates in the National Community Survey, used to be called the National Citizen Survey, and we do opt for a cleanliness question that asks residents to rate cleanliness on a scale of excellent to poor. And we have noticed a decline over the past 3 surveys. It's gone down about 10% in terms of how our residents are rating general cleanliness across the community. We also paid a benchmark against other cities with a tourism-based economy. And of the cities that have tourism-based economies that do participate in this cleanliness question, we do rank near the bottom. So we're at 51 of 64 of other cities with a major tourism industry participating in the National Community Survey. Oops, I skipped a slide. Okay, so getting into our current resources, and we've got this kind of in 3 different categories. So in the category of litter cleanup, pressure washing, street receptacle waste collection, and general maintenance, as I've mentioned, there is a significant resource commitment that's already made. So our parks maintenance, of course, maintains 54 public parks and 6 miles of greenways across the community, and they typically pick up waste at least once a day in all of the parks across the city. Our sanitation division maintains services at 25 street receptacles in West Asheville and Biltmore Village, and that collection is done 3 to 4 times per week. And I did forget to mention at the beginning of this presentation, again, with cleanliness being such a broad topic, we couldn't hit on everything that cleanliness touches. So the focus of what I'm going through right now is primarily the work that's happening on public property as well as public rights-of-way. So not mentioning code enforcement, for example, or waste collection at your own private residence. We have our transit contract, which includes waste collection at most transit stops citywide. My understanding is some of the transit stops in the downtown area, just because we already have city staff and another contractor working in that area, city staff or our contractors collect there, but throughout most of the city, our transit contractor does collect waste at those waste stops. And then we have scheduled targeted litter cleanup events on an as-requested basis across the community. More specifically in downtown, we do have a contractor, as I've already mentioned, that provides 5-day per week litter, pressure washing, weed control, and waste receptacle cleaning throughout the downtown area. Our parks maintenance provides almost 4 FTEs worth of time, 150 hours of service per week to our downtown parks, and that includes litter cleanup and waste collection. And then 2 times per month, they specifically target Pritchard Park to do pressure washing. Sanitation also maintains and services 125 receptacles downtown and collects waste 7 days per week in the downtown area. So the city also in the space of cleanliness provides both fixed and portable restrooms. Citywide, we have 23 public restrooms located in our parks, and 7 of which are open year-round, and 16 we close during the winter months. We also have 2 portable restrooms located at 155 Livingston and 1543 Patton. And a few city council meetings ago, you actually approved a contract to extend those services at least through the end of this calendar year. Downtown, we currently have open 5 fixed public restrooms, and we have 1 portable location at the intersection of College and Rankin. And of course, we're considering some other options, one of which is an ARPA request to potentially enhance and augment restroom availability in the downtown area. We also provide street sweeping services through our Public Works Department. Citywide, street sweeping is provided Monday through Thursday daily, and then downtown Sunday through Thursday nightly. So as I mentioned, we have a lot of partners that contribute to cleanliness. I'll mention 3 of them: Asheville City Schools, Buncombe County, and NCDOT, all of which are responsible and help maintain cleanliness on their respective properties. The city partners with Buncombe County on Sharps kiosks. They currently have 3 Sharps kiosks across the city, and members of our public works team are currently working with county staff to identify 2 to 3 additional locations across the community where Sharps kiosks can be located and serviced. And then NCDOT, in addition to cleaning its own respective rights-of-way, it does have an upcoming targeted litter cleanup campaign kind of synced up with Earth Day and several events that Keep America Beautiful has going on. And they're actually asking for volunteers right now to participate in their litter sweep, which is scheduled to take place April 16th through April 30th. We also have some tremendous partners in the community who contribute to current cleanup efforts that occur. One of particular note is Asheville Greenworks, and this fiscal year alone, they've collected 12,000 pounds of litter and tires from across the community, and they help the city with targeted litter cleanup events throughout the year, one of which I'll mention as a part of our short-term strategies. And they also support Adopt a Spot and Adopt a Street operations. Beloved is another great community partner who most recently had an event on March 1st where some of our unhoused neighbors actually helped clean up downtown. That's the pictures that you see on the right-hand side of the screen. And then Explore Asheville, as well as several other community partners, have partnered with Greenworks and the city in the past on targeted litter cleanup events. So I mentioned as a part of the key takeaways that there are some resource constraints that have contributed to the potential impact on the effectiveness of some of our programming, one of which you've heard a lot about, even as recently as last week's retreat, is staffing, just difficulty hiring and retaining staff in those key cleanliness-related positions. And then, as you have seen in some of our preliminary budget conversations, even during today's Finance and HR Committee meeting, there's a need not only to fill our existing vacancies, but a need for additional staff to help provide services where we've got a greater need and a greater demand. We also have some communications limitations. Part of that's associated with staff, but there really is a need for a truly comprehensive community-wide communications campaign where we're consistently messaging with several partner agencies that we all contribute to the litter problem and that we all need to be a part of the solution. So that's part of one of the long-term strategies that I'll hit on in a moment. Primarily driven as a result of the pandemic, there has been a marked reduction in volunteerism and people's willingness to volunteer. We've also heard some concerns related to biohazards that has impacted people and neighborhood groups' willingness to have community cleanup events. So that's something we're strategizing on. We're hoping as we start to come out of the pandemic that some of those concerns will be alleviated, but we do need to identify strategies, particularly in the biohazard space, to help address those concerns and still continue to encourage volunteerism in community cleanups. And then lastly is the lack of a dedicated funding source. So there are specific geographies across the community that have requested a higher level of service than the city right now has resources available to provide. And so we need to look at how do we find a sustainable funding source that's specifically dedicated to addressing these cleanliness issues so that we can make the impact and provide the level of service that's expected by those constituents and business owners. So getting into the short-term improvement strategy, and the great news on the short-term improvement strategy is it does not require any additional resources, and we are either currently planning or have already programmed all of the items that are listed on this slide. So targeted cleanup events is a major part of our short-term improvement strategy. City staff is coordinating with neighborhoods and other community partners on really how do we program out the next several months of targeted cleanup events. So we're working in CDOT. I already mentioned that their sweep that they have. We have an event scheduled for April 19th that's primarily in downtown that we're working with Asheville Greenworks, Beloved, and the Asheville Downtown Association on. And then things are still in the works on this, so I'm going to give you a little bit of information and then just stay tuned because we're going to have a bigger communications campaign. But between April 18th and April 23rd, we're looking at having a truly citywide spring sweep where we're inviting neighborhood groups, other community partners to participate and make sure that we have resources available to pick up the trash after it's been collected by those community associations. So I know that's something Public Works as well as our CAPE department are currently working on in partnership with Asheville Greenworks and ADA. Enhanced waste collection. So one of the many things that staff has been working on associated with cleanliness, as you all know, is meal sharing. And one of the strategies we've been working with as we talk to partners about how do we address the cleanliness concerns associated with meal sharing is really how do we right-size the receptacles and make sure that waste collection is available whenever those events are provided. And so we're looking at some really creative strategies in that space, and those are ongoing conversations, but we're hopeful to have some recommendations, particularly related to right-sizing that waste collection and what that waste collection strategy is very soon. Moving on to temporarily assigning additional staff. So Not ideal, but we have assigned some staff, particularly from our graffiti crew, on an as-needed basis to address litter concerns citywide, not just downtown, whenever we do have a higher volume of requests come in. And then looking at enhanced reporting and communications efforts. I mentioned some of this at last week's retreat, but we know that there are some things that the city could be doing better in terms of how we consistently use our Asheville app data and some of our processes for the use of the Asheville app internally to improve the customer experience and then also to improve our reporting capabilities on that. So that's something that I'm working with our IT and our ODAP team on right now. And then I've already hit on this a couple of times, but just refining our communication strategy. In the short term, Dawa's team is actually working on regular social media posts, mentioning the targeted cleanup events that are occurring, and then also helping repost some of the information that Asheville Greenworks has produced, as well as Keep America Beautiful and other nationwide cleanliness partners. So getting into the long-term improvement strategy, and again, this long-term strategy, most of these items will require additional resources, and most of these items will require the contribution of our community partners in order to make them effective and truly address the root causes of cleanliness across the community. So we need to identify additional staff resources. I've already hit on that. And then we're also looking at some creative strategies in terms of use of temporary labor, contracted labor, and again, how can we more effectively use volunteers from across the community to help contribute to addressing cleanliness concerns. One of the key recommendations we've heard from Public Works is the need for a true solid waste master plan to make sure that we're being as effective and using the most modern best practices in our solid waste department. Our staff has done a phenomenal job with their existing resources, but there are some opportunities, and we definitely want to look to national experts in how we could further augment and improve and make those operations more efficient. I've mentioned the communications campaign several times, but really we've already started some preliminary conversations with our community partners, but we will need some resources to develop that campaign, and we've been talking to DAWA about what that would look like. And then ultimately we need the partnership and the willingness of other agencies across the city, as well as neighborhood associations and that sort of thing, to really make this an impactful campaign that changes behavior, hopefully, and addresses some of the root cause issues that we have contributing to the current cleanliness issue in Asheville. We've talked about improved use of data and reporting, so not just with the Asheville app, but looking at our other tools, conducting a gap analysis on what are we missing, and that's something that is on the radar of our IT department, and ultimately we will likely need additional resources if we were to enhance some of our reporting capabilities that we currently have. And then lastly, I've already mentioned this one, but of course, that dedicated funding source, particularly in the downtown. There have been a few ideas floated, including the Business Improvement District. And if we are to provide a sustainable long-term source of funding to provide a higher level of service, we are going to need to find something that's more permanent than just one-time funding, depending on grants, or continuing to dip from the general fund as the primary source to augment services in key geographies across the community. So getting back to the key takeaways, just again, community cleanliness really is a multifaceted issue that's going to require a community-wide solution in order to effectively address. There are already significant resources that have been contributed to this issue, both by the city as well as our fantastic partner agencies. There are some environmental factors and then just straight up resource constraints that have impacted our ability to address some of the cleanliness concerns in the community. And the city and our partner agencies have worked closely together to identify several of those short-term strategies that we've identified. And then we've worked on long-term strategies as well. But ultimately, we are going to need to identify additional resources in order to carry several of those long-term strategies out. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I've got a question I don't know that you can answer tonight, but first of all, thanks for this presentation. It was very thorough, and thanks to all the folks who worked on it. So you know, I noticed we're kind of benchmarking with other tourist communities, and we're not doing well in comparison to them. And I know other cities that are considered tourist towns have a lot of different revenue mixes that they're able to rely on in cleaning their city, supporting the infrastructure needed. And we have a pretty challenging situation by comparison from a revenue standpoint. I'd be curious to know, and I mean, not for tonight, but as you all, look at possible revenue streams, what the relationship is between the use of a room tax in other cities for purposes of addressing cleanliness in the city, like whether it's a Charleston or, Savannah, other communities that might seem similar to us whereas we're, as I understand it right now, I mean, under the constraints of the legislation that the Tourism Development Authority has to operate under, they're not able to use any of the now almost $25 million a year in room tax money to help fund cleanliness efforts in areas that are visited by tourists. So I'd be interested to know what that looks like, because I know the TDA's got legislation pending in the state legislature that they hope will pass this session that will give some more flexibility to how those funds can be used, and I hope we're prepared to be able to approach them with some suggestions for ways we can partner around the revenues needed to cover this cost.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion, and we have the list of those cities, so it would be really easy for us to conduct some preliminary research and then pair that up with conversations we're having with the TDA.
I'd like to support that effort. Additionally, I guess I thought there was a chance that the potential legislation may increase the definition of capital and it might allow us to do maintenance. Has anybody else understood? Okay, great. Thank you. I'd also be curious to know, previously this community underwent some processing and inputting around a business improvement district. And if you are looking at these kind of funding sources, I'd be curious to know when that was or what that looked like or what the outcomes were as well.
And so far, I've only had very preliminary conversations just to get a high-level overview, so I wouldn't want to speak specifically on that this evening.
Similarly, I don't know what all happened, but I would be curious to know. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was this last slide with the downtown restrooms. When I see this, I think, this is a lot of restrooms, and I know we're looking at an ARPA request for the Portland Loos, but are we continuing to have infrastructure and repair problems with these?
Yes, and actually we've had several conversations even this week. So one of the concerns that we repeatedly receive requests on is, could we have 24-hour restrooms at some of the fixed locations? Of course, we need to have 24-hour staff available to support those facilities, and then some activity that's not typically, some of the restroom facilities that have been designed were not designed for some of the activity that's occurring in them. And so we need to upfit some of our existing facilities if we were to expand hours, especially knowing that we don't have staff available. So I know that's something that Jade is looking at. Some conversations are being had on what we could potentially do, but ultimately that would result in some additional resource requests in order to get those heavier duty toilets or potentially have additional staff available to provide surveillance to those locations.
Thank you. 2 more comments and I'll be done. And I really want to say thank you. You did a great job on your first presentation. This is more than I ever knew, and I feel like I knew a lot. So very
I was a little
thorough.
out of breath, but I'm blaming the baby for that
I
one.
didn't see any water break. You're good. But 2 things I noticed, and just comments. I noticed that I receive a lot of input and sometimes photographs in our emails around 2 particular issues. One is our you mentioned it, the bus stops that aren't in downtown and debris. So, and I think I heard that ART maintains that. I'd be curious to know if that's something we can talk to them about increasing. And then the street sweeping downtown, I often hear that the weekends were a mess, but I noticed that it's Friday and Saturday night we don't clean. So I'm just going to point those out as potential areas for future improvement.
Okay, any other?
Yeah, I have a couple things. Thank you, Rachel. The general litter narrative. I have the PowerPoint pulled up. If we could go back to that so that folks can see what I'm looking at. It's slide number 4, or page number 4. I did hear that we're making that connection with our daytime population. Workforce wasn't mentioned, but tourism was. But when I look at general litter, it's not here. And I think we'd be remiss in not including our daytime population in this list, while I do see encampments here. And just as a juxtaposition, I wonder if encampments would even be on this list if we had a temporary managed camping facility with sanitation. Additionally, when I look at this, I'm concerned that we have a $840,000 ARPA funds application for cleanup. And when the city participates in applying for these funds, it reduces the available funds for all the other partners that are doing urgent work that don't have the resource of our general fund balance, which, if there's a rainy day, the COVID-19 pandemic is one. So I guess the two main things I'm asking about, I know you mentioned that we can't list everything, right? But we are not mentioning our humongous tourism industry in that list and our daytime population with the workforce. And we are mentioning one that we are choosing not to currently maintain it in a different way. So I'd appreciate if we could work on the narrative data. And then I do appreciate what the mayor said about a funding partnership and TDA funding. When we look at doing partnership for sharps cleanups, I did hear that we were talking about working with the county on that. And I think we should also add our grassroots and nonprofit organizations that are doing work on the ground with the public already, so that we can make sure that we identify where the need is needed most, and also potential solutions that might be outside of something that we would think of first. So thank you for taking the time to pull up the slide. If we could, it's page number 4.
And just to note on the Sharps kiosk, the timing is really great. Appreciate the comment that you provided. I believe there's some new county staff that have come on board that are working with Greg Schuler and the Public Works team on identifying those locations. So a great suggestion, and we will make sure we're bringing in some community partners as we're identifying those additional 2 to 3 locations.
So an example of what that looks like is when we worked with the county before, we ended up putting one 2 or 3 blocks away from where an existing Sharps container was maintained by Steady Collective. So it would be unfortunate if we ended up doing the same thing again, where we're duplicating the efforts instead of expanding our response.
Understood.
Thank you.
Mayor, just to close it out, I should have done a better job of handing this subject matter off to Rachel in the beginning, but you all know how, and we see this with the results from the community survey, how important an issue this is. And I really, really want the Asheville community to understand the complexity of the issue, that this is something that we are not taking serious. It is simply a challenge, like a lot of things are these days, but hopefully from the information that we've shared with you, that you all will see that we are taking some fairly, I hope progressive, you will deem them as progressive steps to try to respond to this issue. There are some short-term things, but the way that we really make an impact is addressing some of the longer-term things that were identified as part of this presentation. And lastly, I just wanted again to thank Rachel and the team who pulled together this information and who literally have lots of boots on the ground doing this work, which right now is very, very, very complicated. But we're getting there, and we're making some progress. And lastly, Mayor, if you don't mind, I'd like to change subjects for just a minute to acknowledge a staff person, Amber Weaver. This will be Amber's last meeting with us, with the City of Asheville. She is the director of our sustainability department, and just wanted to acknowledge all the great work that she has done to advance sustainability in our
Amber,
community.
why don't you come up and show your face to the cameras.
A heartfelt thanks for the
Absolutely.
opportunity to live and work for this wonderful organization. I want each and every one of you to know, especially my colleagues and council and Deborah, that we have a really great organization. And I know the community gets really frustrated, and I know that the work that we do and the work that we're all doing is to really better the future of Asheville. I am very fortunate that I get to stay here, and I still will be working with the Office of Sustainability. So just thank you for the opportunity to work for the city, and I'll be back. I'll be back one day.
Thank you, Amber.
Thank you, Amber.
Best of luck, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. That concludes the manager's report.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we got to do a series of motions to continue here, but now that we don't have to do roll call votes, it's a little bit easier. So the first is to continue item A until June 28th, 2022. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Did you get it? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The second is a motion to continue item B on the public hearings agenda to April 26th. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Did you get it? And then, okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and then item C to continue to April 12th. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Sandra.
Second. Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, we're going to move on to new business, the Memorial Stadium discussion. And you keep handing me these, okay. And introducing D. Tyrell McGirt, our new, we're not going to call you new for very much longer, but our newish Parks and Rec Director here to make a presentation regarding Memorial Stadium. Welcome.
Thanks. Madam Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, Council, good evening. I appreciate this opportunity to kind of come before you. I will note that this is my first time, so first I want to express how grateful I am getting to know the staff, the wonderful assets that we have within Parks and Rec. It's been awesome the last couple months, getting to know the team, and I'm very appreciative of this opportunity to work for the city of Asheville, working alongside with Deborah, my colleagues, other department heads, and working along with you all to move forward some Park and Rec initiatives. So thank you for the opportunity. There's been a lot of talk about Memorial Stadium, the improvements that the city has already started making progress towards, and the presentation tonight, all I'm gonna do is just kind of walk through what has happened, where we are, and make some recommendations for moving forward with the project. The outline, again, I talk about some key takeaways. Again, we'll talk about what has happened in phase 1 of the improvement project. I'll go into phase 2, those planned projects that are planned to happen at Memorial Stadium. I will dive deeply into the trail and track options that have been in discussions, and then talk about some recommendations that are coming from staff and next steps of what those look like. So, some key takeaways today. Phase 1, again, we look at this Memorial Stadium project as a multi-phase project. So the enhancement, phase 1 enhancements have already taken place. I talk a little more in a few minutes about what that looks like. As we started moving and preparing to enter into phase 2 of the project, we started hearing interest from community users, other user groups within that utilize the facility to look at expanding the track option. So that was something that has come up in conversation quite a bit. And then staff started looking at the feasibility. What does that look like if we expand from a walking track to a 6-lane competition track? After further discussions, the community and with the community and other user groups, after doing an internal assessment of what can happen, staff concluded, and we are making the recommendation to move forward with a 6-lane competition track as a part of the phase 2 initiative of improvements that are happening at Memorial Stadium. So those are some takeaways. Again, I dive deeply into some of these more specifics as I go. Phase 1, completed projects. These are projects that have already been completed in phase one of Memorial Stadium improvement. You'll see here a before and after photo. This kind of shows the turf that was down before. That turf was put down in 2003. It was replaced in January 2022. So we're still finalizing the push button issues on this particular item, but adding new turf, replacing and relocating stormwater in the area, adding new field drainage, cleaning up the concrete bleachers that are out there and been out there since the beginning of the stadium founding, and then adding some accessible features to make the stadium accessible for all that are coming out to utilize the space. Other completed projects in phase one included the accessible features, like I just mentioned, accessible ramps from the concrete bleachers. You would notice also that a sidewalk along the ends of the field connecting the pedestrian access up to the bleachers. Of course, anytime you go in and you start making renovations to a facility, you have to make it ADA. So these are some before and after pictures of projects that have already taken place in phase one of Memorial Stadium improvements. Phase two, these are planned projects, and planned projects are happening both at Memorial Stadium as well as over at Mountainside Park. So we'll start with the playground. Part of what we're looking to do at the playground is add a walking track or a trail that goes through Mountainside Park. We'll add a trike track, and this is just a track that typically goes around playgrounds. It's a space where kids can come out, bring their big wheels, tricycles, learn how to ride their bikes for the first time. Parents can also utilize this to just walk around while they have their kids playing on the playground. We'll add a pour-in-place surfacing. This again makes the actual playground accessible for all kids. We'll move away from the wood fibers or any other rubber fibers that you can use as playground surfacing to a pour-in-place. This makes the surfacing soft but also solid that you can roll a wheelchair over it so kids can enjoy also. We'll replace the swings out there. We'll add some seating, some benches, some tables, some picnic tables, and some trees that will one day grow into mature trees and provide some additional shade for the playground area. Phase two will also include making some changes to the current restroom and concession stand facility. So what we'll look to do is demolish the current restroom facility as well as the current old concession stand. We'll look to construct new facilities in their place, combine them into one facility instead of having two different facilities. We improve the accessibility in the area, add some security lighting, and then make some upgrades and improvements to the actual scoreboard. So here are the two existing structures that are there, the current restroom facility, the current concession stand. Again, we'll look to, in the location of the current concession stand, demolish that and put in a new facility that can accommodate both restrooms and storage facility where our maintenance crews can store their maintenance items. The track options. So again, since I've been here a couple of months now, the conversation has kind of shifted. As staff started progressing, moving forward towards making the phase two of the project happen, which included the restrooms, the concession stands, the upgrades to the playground, we presented options for a track to the community, and we started hearing that this isn't going to work. There were original plans for a 6-lane track, so that kind of altered how do we move forward with this project. So keeping that in mind, staff started thinking about the feasibility again of what a 400-meter 6-lane track would look like and how do we incorporate that into the current design for phase two of Memorial Stadium improvements. Staff developed 3 possible options for a trail. And the third option included the 6-lane track that we started hearing community input from, saying that this is what the community wants. And we provided some pros, some cons of what each option would look like and presented that to the community. These are a couple of the options that were presented. Option 1 includes a walk-in track. You will see that this walking track is primarily situated through, I guess this just isn't working. Option 1, the walking track is situated primarily through Mountainside Park. It does kind of dip down into the Memorial Stadium area, but the original plan was we would have a walking trail in this area. That's option 1. Option 2 is a walking track that kind of does both. It goes around the field at Memorial Stadium as well as continue through Mountainside Park. The biggest change here is the trail that is presented would be a asphalt paved trail or track, roughly 10 to 12 feet wide. It would connect down to the track around Memorial Stadium. And then once you got to Memorial Stadium, it would be a combination of using the existing turf that is already down and incorporating that into the track around the field. So it would be a hybrid version as you're walking around the field itself, but everything that you see in red, everything that you see in yellow up here would be the paved portions. And again, the blue portions here would utilize the existing turf with restriping to identify the track itself. I'm sorry, Madam Mayor. And then this is the 6-lane track option. So here you have an actual 6-lane competition track. It is 400 meters in distance, again, 18 feet wide. So each lane will be approximately 3 feet wide. It is a rubber track, pretty traditional and common to what you see at a middle school or a high school. Adding this 6-lane track, it would reduce the current turf from 6 to 65 feet in width. Currently, it is 70 feet width. It would replace the existing restroom. We would replace the bleachers, the metal stands that are on the west side of the field. We'll put down a concrete slab that could accommodate some temporary bleachers or stands should the need arise. And then we will have to modify some of the existing stormwater infrastructure with the addition of this option of the 6-lane track. So again, after some further discussion with the community, other user groups, doing an internal assessment, staff is ready to move forward with the recommendation of a 6-lane track that we are considering, that we ask staff or council to consider implementing in phase 2 of Memorial Stadium improvements. With the recommendation, this is kind of what it would all look like. So it's combining kind of all options into one big option. Got a little bit of what we saw in option 1, certainly what we saw in option 2, and then the third option with the 6-lane track is all included here. So again, this would include the 6-lane competition track. It would reduce the size of the current field again from 70 yards wide to 65 yards. We will replace the existing restroom building and the concession stand building, replace that with a new building that accommodates both in one. We would do away with the bleachers on the west side of the field, those metal stands that are currently there, put in a concrete slab. Again, temporary bleachers could be brought in. We'll modify and update the stormwater infrastructure. We will add additionally the trail that goes through Mountainside Park. We'll make those playground improvements that I talked about earlier, and all of that comes with a price tag of roughly approximately $4.4 million. So our recommendation is adopt the resolution authorized by the city manager to identify funding for phase 2 of Memorial Stadium improvements as recommended by staff, then enter into a design phase to include a 6-lane competition track with the dimensions as described in the attached exhibit, and begin implementation of the staff recommendation as described. in the staff presentation here today. Next steps would be, if approved, staff would start identifying possible funding sources. We talked about that $4.4 figure. That does include $1 million that is already allocated to the phase 2 of this project. We've had some discussions about roughly $2.5 million coming from ARPA funding. We did at staff throw out the $2.5 million as a guesstimate of what we thought a track would include. We did get proposals back from the consultant that included, I think it came to $3 million, was that, Jade? Just the track by itself.
And while he's making his way up here, I was looking at the staff report, and it notes the fiscal impact is that the cost to cover entire recommended improvements is 3.5 million, but it's really 4.4 million.
The total cost is the 4.4 million, which includes the 1 million that is already set aside for phase 2 of the project.
So in the staff report, it says the funding gap is 2.5, but it's really 3.4.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Jay can speak a little more to how we came up with what that gap looks like.
Thank you. Jay Dundas, Capital Projects Director. Actually, D. Tyrell was correct that the information that was provided from the designs consultant was about in the range of $3 million. It did include the relocation of the concession stand and the restrooms, and it also did include additional bleachers at that. There's also, I don't think it was pointed out, that this would actually require a retaining wall around the northwest corner in order to be constructible. So that is an additional cost for this project.
So the total is, we'll modify the staff report in here, yeah. So the total is 4.4.
Yes,
we have 1 million identified. And so that, and the 4.4 includes, the proposal is to demo the concession stand, the bathrooms and storage, and build a new bathroom/storage building, but not a new concession stand building. I didn't see that in there, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, but the rest of it is all included in that total price tag 4.4. There's not anything we're leaving out.
And that 1 million is money that was part of the bond from 2016, 2017. And can someone confirm that allocating it towards this will be equivalent to using it? I'm not sure if it's spending or constructing.
Yeah. So the requirements for the bond funds are to have the bonds issued by November 6th of 2023. We need time to issue those bonds, and so we have self-imposed a deadline of spring, May, June of 2023 in order to have them encumbered in a construction agreement.
Do you remember what the original budget was?
I don't.
About 4.7?
4.5, or yeah.
You're talking about when the 2016 bonds were put together, the rough, yeah, that sounds about right.
I just have a couple questions. I'm just wondering if you could, I've been asking this, but I've never quite got the number. Those concrete stands, how many people can it seat?
So we guesstimate about 600.
Oh, okay, that's helpful.
No, you're concrete.
Oh,
She's talking about the
I'm sorry,
concrete.
not the metal. The concrete is about 1,200.
1,200, okay, thank you. And then if you could just let me know if any users are being displaced by this design, or if by implementing this wonderful track, we might increase some users?
Yeah, well, one of the increases would be being able to offer a track program, a track and field program, right? So that would be in an increased user group or increased user. No one is being displaced by this. We would have to change how we do like flag football. Soccer will have to apply for a waiver to continue, Asheville City Soccer to continue playing on the field. But no one is being displaced by the addition of the 6-lane track.
Can I ask about the track surface? I know for a competition track surface, it needs to be, or it's ideally a rubber track, right? Is the plan, the 4.4 million, including that level of of a track.
Yeah, so it would be the traditional rubber surfacing that you're used to seeing at a middle school, high school.
High school, yeah,
Yeah.
right.
This is Kim. I have a couple questions. Starting off with projected programming. So acknowledging that this is going to be a beautiful new track and the work that my colleagues have done with the neighborhood to get us to this place where we are meeting our agreements that we promised in the bond. I anticipate that this new track will have additional programming. What does it look like when private, public schools, nonprofit organizations, and especially the neighborhood want to program in this new facility?
Yeah, so all of those things will be handled similar to how we're currently handling them, right? We haven't had any discussions as a staff about kind of what this looks like, other than we know with the addition of a new track, becomes a new asset for the department. This, as in addition to all the other things that we have within the Parks and Rec asset list, a track. So we're able to provide track and field programming. What that looks like in terms of other nonprofits, schools, businesses wanting to utilize it, I would imagine it would be the similar process to any other group that wants to come in, utilize any other park space. There's a process that they will have to go through. But from a Parks and Rec perspective, we would look at increasing and moving into the track and field programming options.
And with that new programming, we would anticipate a parking plan for those events?
I think parking
access?
plan in general just needs to happen for this area, period.
Yes, indeed. I'm worried about the neighborhood issues for parking. Question 2 I have is the park maintenance facility. Can we confirm that we've moved the park maintenance facility there, but we don't have a plan to move it out of the neighborhood? Because I know when we're doing our facilities assessment, we're not going to have a Parks and Rec facilities assessment that leaves out our maintenance facility, because that's part of Parks and Rec.
Yeah. So we're making some headway. We're in the process now. We've identified some space in the city where we could potentially move to. We don't know what the agreements will be moving forward. We're in conversations with what a lease would look like. What is our potential for moving into this new space, but nothing has been solidified at the moment. We're just starting the conversations. But we are actively looking at spaces to move the Hunt Hill maintenance facility out into another area.
So I have question number 3 of 6, plans for private-public partnership with Carolina Day. So we allocated part of $2 million of our park acquisition funds of the bond program to partner and expand the sports facility with Carolina Day. Have we started talking with them about that being part of our facilities assessment, and could we look at a potential of alleviating some of the demand for this facility by using that one?
Yes.
And just to clarify, maybe you want to, we're now talking about a different location altogether, just to be clear.
I got you. I follow. So of that $2 million that was allocated for the property that we purchased from Carolina Day, 1.5.
I don't think, okay, maybe it's just to clear this up. I'm not sure we bought it from Carolina Day. It is adjacent to Carolina Day's property. This is off Sweeten Creek in South Asheville.
Yes, this is the property.
Mayor, could we get Allison Dane?
And I submitted all these questions in advance.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure everyone's following the conversation here, because now we're talking about a different, did you want somebody else? Allison's like, do I?
Allison has been
really
associated
need
with
to
this
go up there?
project from the beginning, so.
Yeah, I just wanted, I didn't want you to have to take that one. That's historical stuff, so.
Hello, Allison Daines. If you could repeat the question for me one more time.
Sure. So this is around just our facilities assessment that we're looking at and the acquisition that we made to purchase using the bonds program, a different facility. So I guess my question is, as we're looking at programming a new facility, what is the opportunity to compare the two so that maybe we can take off some of the burden of this facility by using our private-public partnership with Carolina Day?
Right, so the bond funding for land acquisition for the 10.88 acres that we purchased was for a passive park is what we were looking at originally. So we're not right now looking to add any particular facility onto that 10.88 acres. We're also in conversation right now with Carolina Day for the potential of a partnership utilizing their facility that they already have there, but that's not come to fruition yet, but we're in conversation about it.
Thank you. I look for updates on that. What is the impact of the turf that we paid additional funds to stripe for football and stormwater mitigation? And my understanding is we'll continue to have football. It won't have an impact.
Yeah, so that's to be determined. We don't know what the full impacts are. I don't know if we're able to continue to operate within the current footprint of striping that we have with the addition of the 6-lane track. We're still looking at that part.
And then I think you already answered this, but are we going to make an effort to install the new track between seasons, or can we expect that existing programming will have an interruption of their season?
There will be some impacts, right? The facility is used primarily March through October. So we will make as a team every effort to try to minimize what that impact is to the current users.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I have a question about the temporary seats that were removed. Where are we going to store those seats? And if a person needed or a group needed extra seating, how would they assemble them? Who would be responsible?
So we would have to have those conversations. I see it, the organization being responsible for providing those additional seatings. The current seats that are there, those metal bleachers, would be demolished as a part of this project, so they would be torn down. It would just be a concrete slab. And then as we move forward with renting the facility out or providing programming, we have to do an assessment of what that looks like. I see it moving forward as it could be a combination. It may be that we identify a vendor that has them in town where we can bring in the seating, or for anything certainly making a profit, it would be put on them to provide that additional seating.
So the current metal bleachers don't fit with this because they're too deep, and so they're getting demolished. But my understanding is that the concrete pad that's shown there on the, I guess, the bottom, would hold temporary metal bleachers or some kind of bleachers that can seat the same number of people as the current bleachers. They just had different configuration. They're wider and less deep. But I think what you're saying is it would be the user group that would fund those bleachers and be responsible for bringing them in and bringing them out when they want to use them.
Correct. And again, we would have to have those conversations. I mean, we're in the beginning stages of deciding what that agreement would look like moving forward.
Dee, I'd like to ask a question. I realize that a lot of people are really concerned with the parking situation that we will encounter there. Have you been in talks with some of the groups as far as them providing their own off-site parking with shuttles available to accommodate the different activities that we're expecting?
We have not been in conversations, but it is certainly a part of, it's on our radar. We know that a parking plan needs to happen. We need to come up with what that process is going to look like for any user group, be it that the soccer group or anything that we're doing, anything that's going to have a significant impact on the community. It has to be accompanied with a parking plan. We haven't scratched out what that's going to look like at this point.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, whether or not you are participating or maybe expecting the user group to actually make accommodations for that.
I would imagine we would do a combination. Again, it depends on if it's something that we're sponsoring as a department, regardless of who's having it, a parking plan needs to happen for any user group out there.
Thank you.
We've heard that loud and clear.
I have a not so fun fact, and so it's not going to be followed by a question, but one that I want to share with colleagues and the community at large. As I was diving down this Memorial Stadium rabbit hole, I came across city council meeting minutes from March 6th of 1998. And you know how they say history doesn't repeat itself, but it surely rhymes. On that date, the subject of conversation was the sale of Memorial Stadium to an independent purchaser. And the reason for the proposed sale was to benefit a little league team from North Asheville. And it looks like we were considering it because Memorial Stadium was in such disrepair. An estimation was around $30 million over the course of 15 years to get it up to par. So again, this was in 1998. And at that time, some of the reasons for not doing so seem very similar to reasons I'm hearing at this time. One was, do not put the burden on funding a park in North Asheville on the backs of people in Central Asheville. Over 495 children live in public housing within walking distance of Memorial Stadium. Memorial Stadium is being used by the neighborhood. Memorial Stadium is used by elderly as a safe, secure place to walk and exercise. Let's see. Memorial Stadium should remain for the historic value. It's an excellent site for the community to hold large meetings. We need to save the land not only for ourselves, but for future generations. Do not sell Memorial Stadium. And there are many, many other requests not to sell that property. There's a listing also of folks who spoke on it. They included Ms. Eleanor Earl, Mr. Benny Lake, who happens to be the father of Keenan Lake from My Daddy Taught Me That. And Keenan is also someone who actually has a track league. And so this facility will be important for him. Also is notable that the Reverend O.T. Toms, those of us who are deeply rooted in the community, remember Reverend Toms. He happened to be a seated member of council. He was the pastor, and on a personal note, he's one of the pastors who helped raise me when I was growing up in East End. He was on council, and as it turns out, he was attending a meeting in D.C. on the evening that this item was brought to the agenda. And the reason it was brought on that agenda was because the previous agenda, the majority of the body decided to move it to that meeting day. And so his flight was to arrive at 5:15. I imagine that council meetings also started then at 5 o'clock. So it looks like he had to rush in and arrived around 6:15. And the measure to sell fell by a vote of 4-3. So we came this close to not even having that property there to be the subject matter of this conversation. So I suspect, I don't know, that it's very likely that around 20 years from now we might be having a similar conversation. So my hope is that those here today advise your children and grandchildren of the history of this property. Tell them to gird their loins and be prepared when this issue potentially comes back up again in 20 years or so.
That wasn't a question, right? Thank you for that. It sounded a lot like a motion, and we might be ready for that unless you had more to add or anyone has any other questions.
Just one last comment. I think that I hope we are considering this for a potential TPDF ask as that term approaches.
Well, I think that's a good point. Could you please speak to the recommendation around the funding gap? So we've identified there's a funding gap, and there is a recommendation in the staff report to ask staff to basically go back and kind of come back to us with a recommendation about the funding piece of it.
Correct. So we're looking at a funding gap of roughly 3.4 million. Staff will have to take a look at it. It has already been brought up to use part of ARPA funding. We have to have that conversation with city manager's office, finance, and decide how we're going to meet that gap.
And so to translate what Sage is talking about, TPDF would be room tax funding through the TDA, which is opening a cycle this spring. It may or may not be eligible for funding, but that is obviously something that should be considered. Do you want to add any, is there anything else anybody else needs to add before we entertain a motion? It looks like your light is on.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to clear up the unfortunate thing that happened is we sent you all a PDF of the staff report after it had been updated with this information, the new numbers. So that's one. And then secondly, this has been a really, really interesting process in terms of, kind of the evolution of it. But I really think that we have ended in a good place, and that the issues around some of the programming and parking, and we're going to have to work through those details. We just don't have all of that information today, but I think we have hired a person that will make sure that this comes through fruition and that it has as minimal an impact on the quality of life of people in East End as well as Oakhurst. And then lastly, I will say that our Park and Recreation Director has evolved. He called this park Morningside several times at the community meeting, and now he's saying Mountainside.
I drew myself a picture with a mountain. Everyone can see my mountain, so I can remember Mountainside, not Morningside.
So thank you.
Thank you.
I did want to thank you. That was your first presentation as well, and just great job. I learned so much through this process, and a lot of that I contribute to my colleagues and their interest in research and formulating this whole story. There's so much to know here, and you picked it up and ran with it really well, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, can we recognize you, Councilwoman Mosley, for a motion, if you would?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to identify funding for Phase 2 of the Memorial Stadium improvements as recommended by staff, to enter into the design phase to include a 6-lane competitive track with dimensions as described in the attached exhibit, and begin implementation of other staff recommendations as described in the staff presentation on March 22nd, 2020.
I'll second. Sandra?
2022.
Okay, Sandra has a second. So we have a motion and a second. So now we'll take comment on this item, and folks, I'm going to go through the list of folks that signed up. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and I think Maggie's got her trusty timer. She is the timer. So the first person I have signed up to speak under this item is Laura McPherson. Okay. Did you also want to speak at the end of council under informal discussion? You're signed up to? No. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So then the next person signed up to speak under this item is Frank Ballantyne. No. That was. Thank you for helping. Mr. Ballantyne. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. I'm Frank Ballantyne. I live here in Asheville, and I wanted to talk about the Memorial Field and whether or not we should have a track around it. First thing I want to say is that I sympathize with people who have memories of high school football games that have happened at Memorial Stadium when Asheville High School held their games there. I know that football games and high school sports provide some of the best memories of our lives. What I'd also like to say is that those memories are still being made right around the corner, because in the 80s, a new stadium was built for Asheville High, including a track. And so it's one of the nicest stadiums in all of the region, in the whole state perhaps. It has beautiful views, and games are still being played, and history is still being made over there. What I'd also like to say is that I disagree with the assertion that the resurfacing that was done was somehow mishandled and was against the will of the community. Because in 2019, a community input session was held. It spanned 2 days. It was at Stephen Lee Recreation Center. There were multiple drawings and plans given at that session, and the one that had the strongest support was for a field with no track. So that support should be honored by the city council. I'd also like to say that soccer at Memorial has been going on for over a decade. And pickup games have been played there long before the bond was approved. And the people playing soccer there, the ones participating and playing, the spectators, sometimes 1,000 to 2,000 people, are from the local community. And they have a wide range of race, age, and gender. So soccer at Memorial is an inclusive activity and should be strongly supported by the city. There's a women's pro soccer team there. That is extremely unique and special. Memorial Stadium is a 100-year-old stadium, a 100-year-old city event center, and should be maintained as such and not diminished in its capacity. We should not remove stands. The recent resurfacing that happened there was in alignment with the input that was given at those sessions. And the $2 million, the $4 million.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
That's
I-
the sound of the timer, sorry.
Are we done?
Yes, yes, thank
No
you.
more time? Okay.
3 minutes, thank you. Okay, the next person signed up, sorry. Okay, the next person signed up to speak under, I have Mr. Paul Howell signed up under East End, but did you want to speak under this item? Okay, thank you.
Seems like y'all would have a meeting 2 days before my teeth come in. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, and Councilwomen. Thank you all. I'm going to try to make this a little bit brief. I want to ask y'all, how many of y'all remember Valley Street? Valley Street. I'm not talking about South Charlotte, I'm talking about Valley Street. Okay, how many of y'all remember Upper Eagle and Lower Eagle? I guess Lower Eagle was referred to as Dirty Eagle then, but my point I'm trying to make is that every time the city comes in to fix something up, they kick us out. And with kicking us out, they slowly remove any trace of our being there. So y'all stick with me. I ain't got my teeth in, my words ain't coming out right. But they slowly remove any trace of our being there. Memorial Stadium, growing up as a kid back in the 70s, I used to go up there and play sandlot football every Saturday. We didn't have to check with nobody about going up there to play. We didn't have to make call, get approval to go play. We could go play. We got our youth football team now, and they had to practice at baseball field out there on Deeperview Road because they cannot use Memorial Stadium. It seems to me that we have enough soccer complexes. We got the soccer complex out there on Azalea Road out there. I mean, what was the purpose of that soccer complex being built if you're going to come and take our little place downtown here where we go for our fun? Our kids don't have nowhere to go. I don't understand. I like the idea of the field being revitalized and whatever it does, bring it up to par. But it shouldn't be a place where kids had to check in to go play. I'm not going to say much more, but I just want to say I'm thankful for what y'all doing, and I'm glad that y'all are making a move on this stadium, but please don't take it away from the community. Thank you.
Daniel Young, I have you signed up under this item too, I think. Yes.
It's me again, y'all. How y'all doing? I'm speaking on the East End as well. If y'all gonna do anything to revitalize this situation for our kids, put some pictures of Mr. Hayes or Mr. O.T. Toms or something to represent us. Don't take it from our kids. Come on. Anything that concerns the black community, y'all want to give it to somebody else. Yeah, you can come and fix the stuff that need to be fixed, but fix it for good intentions. Don't come and sell us out or invite people or hire somebody that ain't even from Asheville that haven't even talked to our community. You could have hired Raymond McDay, us. Get these jobs to people who got heart for Asheville. This guy don't know nothing about Asheville. I mean, I'm not hating on him, but I love my city. So if he's coming in between my city, I'm going to speak out on it. And it look like y'all already voting on it. Stop selling our kids out. What else do y'all want us to do? You want our kids to be out here selling drugs or chasing their dreams, playing football or getting ready for sports? What y'all want to do? You complain if they breaking in your house, but you're complaining about them doing what they supposed to be doing, being kids. So if they get this space, we got to beg them to use it. Then you're going to tear down something that really means something to our community? Enhance it. Put some pictures, some plaques of black people out there like you got at the Civic Center. Put some pictures of Shanika, the all-black council people or something. Put something to recognize us. I'm tired of seeing Asheville just look like white Asheville. Show some color. Put some pride in our city for our kids. Stop selling us out. That's it.
Thank you. The next person signed up to speak is, actually, I'm sorry, I'm not sure exactly what order these went in, but I think it's Kimberly Collins.
Madam Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, City Council. I'm a native Ashevillean, born and raised right here. Know a lot about the history. I moved from one community, the Montfort, Stumptown area, that was decimated through urban renewal, to another black community, East End, which is now under horrific gentrification. What you have done to Memorial Stadium only suits one segment of Asheville's community. The one thing I know about history is that if you don't know history and if you allow other people to tell it, they'll tell it any old kind of way. So let me just run down the history of Memorial Stadium, which is over 100 years old. It was the stadium, not for Asheville High, because Stevens Lee, the Stevens Lee Bears, is who played there. Stevens Lee was the all-black high school for this area. Lee Edwards High School, which is where Asheville High School stands and where that beautiful football stadium sits, was for all white people. So just so we can be clear on that little bit of history, okay? But Memorial Stadium is where we played. It was adjacent and connected to Stevens Lee, which had a stellar football team. It was the pride of East End. It is still the pride of East End. You allowed a bond to be used for individuals who were not from the community. You allowed the FIFA individuals to come in and undermine what was originally supposed to be purposed for the community of East End. You allowed them to come in, tear up the track, which was in existence. So just so I'm clear, the track that you are proposing is just a replacement for what was already there. So had that not been decimated and just ripped up and expanded for FIFA, we probably wouldn't be here having this type of discussion. We'd probably be having more of a discussion of how can we repair the existing track that was there, not just for football, but was there for the senior citizens of East End, that was there for the Little League community, a lot of them predominantly black students. That's where Parks and Rec had their events, 4-track events. Thank you for your time. Do not, I repeat, do not do this to our community because we're all watching.
Thank you. So just to be clear, we have a motion and a second to adopt a resolution that would put in place all the improvements, the $4.4 million worth of improvements that were presented. I just want to be clear about that. That's what's on the table. That's what we're about to vote on.
May I say something, please?
Yes, okay.
Okay.
We have a couple more people signed up.
Oh, okay.
Do you want me to finish and then?
Okay.
All right, the next person signed up to speak under this item is Jonathan Wainscott.
My name is Jonathan Wainscott, and I've been a guest of the East End community for about a decade. I've been able to go there and enjoy Brewgrass Festival, drink a bunch of beer, and listen to music I don't really care about too much. I've been able to go to Asheville tourist baseball games, drink a bunch of beer and watch third-rate baseball. I've been able to go to Memorial Stadium and watch a semi-pro women's football team, Asheville Assault, odd name for a women's football team. Recently, I was the guest of the East End Neighborhood Association talking about this issue. This is not an issue about a track, it's an issue about a neighborhood, and thank you very much for bringing this history to light. I've watched people who look like me enjoy your neighborhood with total disregard, total lack of respect. I enjoy soccer just like everybody else that looks like me, and if you became a soccer fan when you were my age, you certainly would have understood that Pele was the hero of the day back then. This is my high school soccer jersey. I was the second best defensive player in the state in 1988, MVP, captain of a football team, captain of the soccer team. I love soccer. It's time for us to move back on this one, bro. It's time for us to take our ball and go home. This is their neighborhood, and they've been asking for this for a long time.
Talk to the camera. Talk to us here, please.
I am talking to you.
Okay.
I'm talking. You can hear me, can't you?
I can hear you, yes.
All right. It's about time because I know that this neighborhood has been historically ignored. Do you hear me? Do you hear them now? The way this is playing out, too, it's making the black community, the East End community, looking like they're putting on a fresh $4.5 million ask. And that's not what's up. I'm glad that somebody mentioned the Women's Soccer League. I knew it. Because what could be more woke than a women's soccer league here? That's how this all went down, isn't it? I knew it. And you over there are suggesting that there's somewhere else that maybe we could use a track. Maybe you would like to go over to Carolina Day. Would you like to go over to Carolina Day? They have such a nice facility. I would expect that you should appreciate something such as that. Do you hear them now?
Thank you. And our last person signed up to speak under this item is Renee White.
Protocol been established. I am Renee White, president of the East End Valley Street Neighborhood Association. And the first thing I need to say is that we wouldn't be here today if you all had done the right thing in 2018 and 2019. I actually have paperwork from where this all started. I have email conversations between council, some city people about, and to address you about when we had the meetings at Stevens Lee. We were told there were going to be 2 proposals coming to us when we got to Stevens Lee. The soccer team had their shirts on, all dressed up, 100 or more of them.
against us when we got to Stevens Lee, outnumbered us. And when you say that what went in place is what everybody wanted, that's not true. I have documentation to prove you wrong. That is not what we wanted. The track has been talked about since 2018, 2019. And some city staff came in and said, I hope that you're not going to Stevens Lee and propose A and B. We only want one proposal taken over to Stevens Lee. And that's what we got. So we wouldn't be here today if the right thing had been done years ago. We're not asking for much. I'm like him, I'm a native Ashevillean. I'm a native East Ender. I love my community. And I've watched all of this happen over the years, that black people just being pushed out. We dealt with Brewgrass disrespectfully. We dealt with the soccer members disrespectfully. And we're not saying that we don't want you in the neighborhood. Come and play, sure. But respect our community, respect our neighborhood, and do the right thing. And I don't think any of you, especially white people, would want any black people coming in your neighborhoods doing the things that we witnessed in ours, peeing in people's yards. And this is not what, we took pictures, throwing beer cans and old coolers, and these are tax-paying individuals in East End, and the taxes are very high. It's not right for them to have to endure the things that we've had to endure because somebody white wants to come and play soccer, or the Brewgrass wants to drink beer, all in the center of our neighborhood. So do the right thing. We're not asking for much, and we shouldn't be here today asking for really anything, because like Kim said, we could be having totally different talks right now about who could come in East End to the Memorial Stadium and play, not the fact that you took up a track, accommodated that field for soccer, and now we're at this point. And that's all I have to say. I am Renee White.
Thank you. Okay, that is all the folks that signed up to speak under this item. And I think, Sandra, you have something you want to say?
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say, a lot of the things I was going to say, Renee actually cleared. Thank you for that. Made some points that I was going to make. I know that right now we're in a position where we're actually just trying to move forward. The one thing I can say that had they did do the proposal in 2018-19, we would not be able to enjoy a much better upgraded park. So now we have an upgraded park the way it should be, that the black neighborhood need in their community. And now it's just a question of what type of programming that will allow the rec department or the rec department will do and make sure that the programming takes in consideration of what the black community has been through and what this park means to them. And I think they should take precedent over a lot of the programming that's necessary. So, like I said, had it happened before, we wouldn't have put this kind of money into it. Now we have a great park for the community to enjoy and to able to use for our children and to expand our sports, especially track. Track is a big thing in the black community. It always has been. And it's brought people out. So I'm really proud to, and I'm happy to see where we are now. Unfortunately, it took a long time, but like I said, it's been a long time of not getting the quality of parks that other communities enjoy. So now we have that. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to come? Okay, we have. Okay, I think does anyone else have any questions or comments before we take a vote on this matter?
Can I just say one thing real quick?
No, this is not, okay, yeah, okay, no. All right, guys, look. I know we're new at doing city council in person again, but the way it works is you have to sign to speak, you get your moment to speak, and then let us vote here. We're going to vote. And so if no other council members would like to, and hang out afterwards, we'll chit chat with you then. But if nobody else has a question or comment, I think we're ready to vote. Are we ready? Are you guys ready? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that concludes this matter. Thank you very much. Okay, so that concludes our agenda. Thank you all for, but now we're going to do general public comment, but that concludes the substantive portion of the agenda. That was your opportunity to make your exit if you didn't want to stick around for the last part, but you're absolutely welcome to stay for the remainder. So I have several folks that are signed up for under informal discussion and public comment. Again, same rules apply. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and our city clerk, Maggie, will continue to keep the time. Okay, so the first person signed up is Robert Hardy. I'm sorry. The first person signed up is John Ryder. Am I saying that right? Or is that right? No, it's fine. Okay, no. Okay, then Robert Hardy. Anybody? Nope. Okay. No, wait, oh, wait. Sorry. Sorry, thank you.
Peace and glory be to the Most High, the universal Most High. Zeitgeist. And since I may be pronouncing it wrong, I'll spell it. Zeitgeist. And I say that because I came with another introduction, but zeitgeist means the spirit of the moment and the spirit of the time. And I didn't know East End was coming with that. I'm glad I came. The seeds of deprivation, anguish, anxiety, and paranoia bear strange and bloody fruit. They provoke the quiet and humble citizen to pick up the gun and defy his instincts and spread death and violence in our cities. We have a problematic situation. Houston, we do have a problem. My address was systemic anomaly. The systemic anomaly. That means you never straighten the board. My topic, Walton Street Pool, urban removal, the final whitewashing of Asheville's black past. The community was promised that their voices would be heard. The community was promised that the decisions would be theirs. The community was engaged to present their design. I was promoted to speak before you, and you will be getting a registered mail letter that includes more definite distinction than on this subject matter. Walton Street Park update. Misinformation. Walton Street Pool is 9 feet, not 12 feet. Walton Street Pool does not have an immediate drop-off. It is a gradient level from the steps right there that you see, the kiddie steps, and it gradiates down to where 5 feet was. There was a tennis court fence to keep the children from going into 9 feet, which is sloped. Okay? So, speaking of which, you have adopted the Wilma Dykeman Plan. The city has adopted the Wilma Dykeman Plan. From that particular standpoint, Mrs. Dykeman said herself that she is not for progress that would disenfranchise and disinherit the people. So at a later time, you will be receiving in the mail, Ms. Campbell and the rest of you, a certified letter addressing this issue more in depth.
Thank you.
And the Spirit of the Lord be upon you, and as Easton said, try to do the right thing.
Thank you very much. Sharon Summerall.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and city manager. My name is Sharon Summerall, and I live in Asheville. Many of you know me from my work on boards and commissions, but I'm here tonight to talk about the issue in my work life. First, I would like to break my anonymity, as we say in AA. I am a recovered addict alcoholic with 35 years of sobriety. As I only have 3 minutes, I will skip my qualification as an addict, but as a person with knowledge as to what it's like to be homeless and helpless. I perceive that so much of what the community sees as helping is actually enabling by not allowing them to experience the consequences of their actions. I got sober after going to jail more than once. This is simplistic, but this is what I see that works and does not work. Needle exchange does not work in this community. It should be a true needle exchange. I or my employee pick up hundreds of needles at the shopping center I manage. A needle return for new needles should be required. New York has a new program that is controversial, but they're providing a safe and controlled environment for those that are IV users. I have been assaulted twice in the last 2 months while dealing with homeless encampments at the center. The police, short-staffed, show up when they can. I have formally filed assault charges against one man who for some reason was never subpoenaed. We need to prosecute, spend the money and have consequences of actions. Another example, one man who would get high and steal and harass shop owners who were trying to get their goods back. I was finally able to coordinate with the police to pick him up and was told he had been picked up 30 times. He needs to be incentivized into rehab or some real jail time. I have spent untold thousands of dollars of my clients' money repairing cut fencing, painting graffiti, cleaning up camping trash, which include blankets, jackets, tents, needles, and 50 grand a year for security, in addition to me having to become a security person. The new iteration of the Ramada Inn, I believe, is much better solution than the first. I have knowledge of sober people who tried to live at the Ramada with all the people that were using, and it was a major disaster. I and all the shop owners and neighbors are concerned about the Days Inn project and hope that as stated there will be tight rules and a good working program. I spent years in my last city in the recovery community running a sober house for women and know how important housing for the population that want help is available. The caveat is help those that are willing. We are fostering people that would rather live in a tent than work a job. I have offered a good wage to people that are homeless to help clean up the shopping center. In 8 years, only 2 people have taken me up. This, of course, is not all, but my observation most. It's a family affair, and I extend my hand to those that want help. Take people to 12-step meetings, job interviews, and have given shelter. But I know from firsthand experience that not suffering consequences, is enabling. And also want to say we need an urban forester, and thank you.
Okay, the next person signed up to speak is Nina Tovish.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I actually came here with a slightly different idea of what I wanted to speak on, but I did want to ask a question about the very interesting and thorough presentation done on the subject of cleanliness. And I was particularly interested in the national survey and where we placed as a city on that national survey. And what I'd like to know is, what were the questions that were asked and what was defined as uncleanliness or dirt or litter? Or it's very hard to know from that what are the most salient issues that are causing people to respond and identifying a location as being unclean. And the reason why I'm interested in this question is because I've been watching with some dismay and distress on our many social media forums the way that people describe the presence of unhoused people on our streets and in our public places. And they talk about those other human beings as infestating a place. They describe them as vermin. And that's the language of the unclean. It has an ugly, ugly history because it allows one group to dehumanize another and then all bets are off in how they get treated. I'm not saying that we don't have huge challenges around this issue of homelessness. We do, and it's going to be a monumental chore to address them. But we have a huge responsibility to make sure that we do it in a way that respects the actual humanity of everybody involved in the encompassing environment: visitors, business people, residents, and those who are unhoused. So I would like to know, what is it specifically that makes Asheville dirty? Is it seeing sleeping bags tucked into doorways? Is it seeing someone who clearly hasn't had a shower in a month? What is it that's causing this degree of fear and revulsion and disdain and outright contempt? I hope we can address that question as we think about what it would mean to make Asheville a clean city, and that it isn't about turning away from the real people who need help and who need a way out. Thank you for your attention.
Next is Don Chavez.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, and City Manager and Councilwoman. My name is Dawn Chavez. I'm the Executive Director of Asheville Greenworks, and I wanted to comment on the cleanliness presentation. I applaud the efforts on cleanliness and addressing this important, complex, and sometimes frustrating issue. Greenworks has been working on litter prevention, cleanups, and waste reduction education for almost 50 years. In an average year, not a COVID year, but before COVID, our volunteers would collect by hand up to 63,000 pounds of trash from around the city and county. Litter is unsightly and it's potentially harmful to the environment, polluting habitat and recreational areas, and causing flooding from clogging storm drains. Cigarette butts are the most littered item, and that might be surprising to some of you. It's also one of the most toxic. There's enough toxins in 3 cigarette butts to kill an adult trout. And while we are huge proponents of education, reaching thousands of children and adults each year through our educational programs, education is not enough. We need enforcement of the law. We can have trash cans or even dumpsters on every corner in the city, and there will still be litter. And it's not because people are uneducated, it's because there's no consequences for littering. If you stop at a light on Patton Avenue, for example, you look to the side and you'll see piles of cigarette butts. All the education is not going to change that. We won't stop doing education because it is still important, but we need enforcement. There has been enforcement in the past, and it has lessened over the years, especially in recent years. Enforcement can look like when someone reports illegal dumping, for example. If there are 3 pieces of addressed letters of mail in the found trash that identify a person and an address, that person can be fined for littering and illegal dumping. Our staff found a bag of trash, reported it to the police who were actually right nearby, and they said they couldn't do anything about it. So people have gone as far as to dump right under a sign that says no dumping, fine, $1,500. So it's not about not knowing it's wrong to litter, it's about not caring because there are no consequences. So I really encourage our city to refocus on enforcement, and I also echo the need for developing a solid waste master plan. Thank you.
Thank you to Asheville Greenworks for all your work on keeping us clean. We didn't realize how much we needed you, Telco. And then the last person I've signed up to speak under public comment is Will Harlan. You're before, I mean, in the list. I just, because I can't seem to read these charts.
Mine is quick. Just want to say thank you, Asheville City Council, for stepping up in this pivotal moment to protect the Pisgah National Forest. You are in good company. Over 14,000 objections have been filed. 14,000, including Buncombe County Commission. And this is one of the most important forests in the country, certainly the most popular forest in the country. And your objection will go a long way to encouraging the Forest Service to protect this special corner. This is an old-growth forest and a waterfall wonderland, only 15 miles from downtown Asheville. So we deeply appreciate Asheville City Council being champions and stepping up and standing with the 120 organizations in Asheville and the 14,000 objections that have flooded the Forest Service, encouraging them to protect this ancient forest and the clean air and the clean water that it provides. So thank you immensely, all of you.
Thank you. And now, lastly, Jonathan Wainscott.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Wainscott. Just continue with the sports theme tonight. You went to UNC, right? Didn't you a Tar Heel? Tar Heel, yeah, right on. How are you feeling about the Tar Heels these days? Loving it? Yeah.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, of course. I love the part where they just went to Duke and beat them at the last regular season game. Went in there and stole the dude's milkshake in his own home field. Love that part. But on to the blood sport of elections. My name is Jonathan Wainscott. I've lived here for 22 years, and I'm here to declare the Asheville City Council election this year is completely rigged. It's fixed. The fix is in. There is one candidate who clearly has an unfair advantage, one candidate only who has already been guaranteed to take the Mose votes. Get it? 'Cause Miss Mosley's, yeah, okay. So, but what's even less funny than a dad joke is the state of our city and the lack of understanding as to why we got to this place. I was down on College Street just today, measuring the street to make sure that Mike Sewell's dimensions for the new bike lane that he's got planned, where he wants to take the parking on the left side of the road and move it over 12 feet to the middle of the road. His dimensions are wrong, and he's off by 4 feet over there. But what I noticed while I was on College Street today, when a fire truck, the biggest one we have, the tiller, that went right past a truck that was already stopped in the road and went past all the existing parking and was able to get right through that situation with our existing conditions with no problem, there was this huge pile of trash. It was right on the corner of the road. I couldn't believe it. And then I looked up the road, and guess what? The entire length of College Avenue from Broadway, right in the middle of town, all the way to Haywood Street, the other middle of town, there's one trash can there, one, and a recycling can. You have more big trash cans between here and the front door of this room than you do on an entire street downtown. And we don't know how does this happen? People make garbage, and the solution is more trash cans emptied more often. That's it. It's not rocket science, it's trash can science. And some of you never went to trash can school. I actually have a bachelor's degree in home economics. Did you know that? It's true. Get sharp. Have a nice night.
Thank you. Take note. Okay, with that, does anyone else have any, like mic drop, here we go with that. Anybody have, we're gonna adjourn, okay? We're adjourned.